r/AskReddit. What is a unique game you played as a child? We made up a game called camera tag, basically hide and seek, but it would have to be in the dark. And you have to have a camera. If you spot someone, you have to take a picture of them with the flash on. If they're in the picture they get caught and they're out. My brother and I would throw a bouncy ball at the stairs and then try to be the first to track it down. This kept us busy for hours. Oh man. I remember this fondly. When I was 8 or so, my brother, I, and my best friend played the Dark Man game. It was hide and seek in my parents' basement with the lights out. The person looking for the other two wore a glow-in-the-dark skeleton mask, so the two people hiding could see him. But he couldn't see us. It got really intense at times. Trying to find your way in the dark and trying to be as quiet as possible. Also, my parents' basement was unfinished, so occasionally you'd bump into a nail, etc. Made it extra dangerous. Lol. Our signature game was Loser Ball, which went like this. Collect every ball in the house. So lots of tennis balls, bouncy balls, a few baseballs, etc. Scatter them in the playroom. Turn off the lights. Throw the balls aimlessly at each other in the dark until someone cries. Wholesome fun for everyone. Unfortunately, I was the youngest, so I was often the loser. It's not what it sounds like, but my cousin and I used to play the underwear game. We would go into her laundry room, which was in the basement with ample room, and both of us would grab someone's used underwear from the hamper. Then we'd fight each other trying to get the underwear over the other's head. Obviously it was disgusting and had to stop when someone caught us playing it. The bomb game. We threw a ball around and if you got hit, you had to lie on the ground for 5 seconds before returning to the game. My sister and I and our brother, like cousins, would play this against our uncles, and although I'm pretty sure if we actually kept score, we kicked their asses. Eventually all the uncles and my dad joined in and the youngest uncle joined the kids team. He told us he played the bomb game in high school. My younger cousins actually believed this, and we wanted him on our team anyway because he was more like the biggest kid. It eventually became a family tradition. Back in the day when my family actually saw each other. We played Ghost. One person is under a sheet trying to catch everyone else and all the lights are off. Usually takes place in the living room, so people are jumping around on furniture. There may have been 1 or 2 concussions because of this game. Lol. We used to play E.T. in the playground. We'd run about acting out scenes from the film. I had a brown parka, so invariably I'd get to be the lovable alien. Great times. We would play baseball in the street but with a tennis racket so we could blast the ball all over the neighborhood. Hide and seek in the dark. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had fun playing that with siblings friends. I used to have fun outwitting my brothers. We'd play in the basement, and when they came down with the flashlight to look for us and went off into a room, I'd sneak onto the stairs they came down off the start and hide there. They'd never think to look there because there's nowhere to hide on the stairs and they just cleared them when they came down. It was funny to watch them walking back and forth in front of the stairs trying to find us. Lol. Spotlight. It is basically hide and go seek, but with key differences. We would don dark clothing and or camouflage. Hide in the forest at night and then wait to be sought out, tracked by the person who was it. Tons of fun. We would take dad's snuff can full of rocks and tape it shut. Then we all face the same way as a designated person through the can way out in the open pasture at night. All players set out to find it, and if you picked it up and made it back to the finish line it was a point. The rocks were audible if shaken. If you were able to tackle the runner before he crossed the line, no point and rethrow. First to 5 wins or first to break a bone loses. My cousin and I used to play witches. We basically made like a million poems about wishing harm on everyone we hate and would run around in the forest cursing them. We also did more wholesome stuff, like picking up twigs and leaves to put in our potion pots. The potions were also usually to curse people though. We didn't really have a name for it, but when we were on the playground for recess in elementary school we would play this game where one of us would go about halfway down the tube slide, where it's just like one big hollow tube like what you'd see at a big water park. Just not as big obviously. And then someone else would slide down as fast as they could and try to dislodge the first dude. Usually he would fail. Then another would come down and try to dislodge the first two guys. Then another. Until Big Mikey would come down and we would all fly out the bottom of the slide like a freshly unclogged pipe. This was because Big Mikey was like 5 times bigger than any of the other 3rd graders. Oh yeah. I think we actually called it Clog the Pipe. Which sounds pretty gay now that I'm recalling it as an adult. Edit. Glad I'm not alone. When all 3 of my siblings were still young children, I'm the big brother of the family. We had a game where I'd do what was basically improv comedy for them. Kinda like SNL or Mad TV. They'd sit on the edge of the bed. And I'd perform using props and my imagination. I had one bit where I'd use mega blocks to create a crude handgun. And pretend I'm a cop. When I'd shout freeze and draw my pistol, the gun's pieces would fly apart, leaving me with just the grip and a stunned look on my face. It slayed them every time. They'd just burst into laughter and tears. We were inadvertent LARPers. My friend lived on a mini farm. They had chickens, llamas, and goats, and his mom would make up Ziploc bags of Monopoly money and hide them all over the place. We would go out and fight imaginary bad guys and find the bags of money so we could upgrade our gear. I was a cleric, so I started with a staff which I upgraded to silver, duct tape on the ends, then later to metal. We hammered Mountain Dew cans as metal end pieces. We made suits of armor out of cardboard boxes which we upgraded similarly. The best was the road by his house. It was the river. And whenever a car would go by it would represent some sahugs, water monsters, jumping out. So we would come flying out of the bushes and start swinging our homemade weapons like crazy people. It was the early 90s in the middle of nowhere. Edit. Instead of answering everyone individually. TL. Doctor, we stayed in contact through high school. I went on an epic cross-country Amtrak trip when I was 16 with them. We drifted apart for about 15 years before reconnecting on Facebook. I made his mom cry good tears when I was able to tell her just how much he meant to me growing up. We used to play tomahawk tag with a Nerf foam tomahawk. It was just tag, but you could throw it and nail someone with it. I used to make tiny spaceships out of Lego and give their captains elaborate backstories. For a couple years I had a friend that did this too. And our politics storyline was epic. It was too bad my family had to move back to Street Louis. I wonder whatever happened to that kid. We lost touch as 12-year-olds do. Island of the Blue Dolphins, inspired by the book. I'd build a little hut in the living room and collect abalone from the beach. They were shoes, and fight off packs of wild dogs played by stuffed animals. I'd make sure to spend a good portion of the day staring wistfully out towards the sea and weep for my dead brother and my people. My actual brother would try to play with me, but I'd be like, no, you can't. You're dead. I'd read the book every summer and get inspired to play again. The wolves in the trees belong to me. 3RD 4th grade. I had a wolf pack that lived in the forest near my school. Keep in mind that the forest was a line of 5-10 short pine trees in a line. The wolf pack was my pack and they all listened to me. And the popular girls would get so mad that they didn't have wolves. So I let them borrow a wolf for recess in exchange for coveted silvery pencils and erasers in the shape of fruit. Shake Shake Shampoo. Like a game of tag, but instead of being it after getting tagged you're immobilized and have to wait until the it gets to immobilize everyone. When the last free person gets tagged everyone shouts Viva while raising their hand. Last person to shout it becomes it. So it's called Shake Shake Shampoo because you have to shake your hips and run your hand through your hair as if you're shampooing it when you get tagged. Being the first one to get tagged sucks because you'll have to shake your hips till the end. In gym class occasionally we were allowed to play this game called line tag. Essentially, everyone would have to stay and move along the gym floor basketball volleyball lines, and the 1 or 2 people who were assigned to be it would have to run along the lines to tag people. If you were tagged, you had to sit down on the line where you were tagged, becoming a roadblock for other people. Loved that game. I'm a camp counselor and we play a game called Screaming Toes with our kids. We get in a circle and pick someone in the group's toes to stare at. Someone counts to 3 and on 3 you look at the person whose toes you were staring at. If that person was looking at your toes too, you both scream and you're both out. The kids love it. My grandpa had a bunch of old tires in his backyard. I liked to stack them and make a Batmobile out of them. My friend and I would rule Gotham, backyard, every day. Used to play Get Down MR President with my mates every now and then. Basically one of us would start the game by placing our hand to our ear, like we were Secret Service. Last one to realize is MR President and we all dogpile him. Our elementary school had a steep hill on part of the playground. So we would play a game that we invented called Best Falls. 5 or 6 guys would line up at the top of the hill. And another guy would be at the bottom of the hill. The guy at the bottom would ask the first guy at the top how he wanted to be killed. The guy at the top would say machine gun or bazooka or hand grenade. Then the guy at the bottom would make a big show of using that weapon on the guy at the top. While the guy at the top would make a big show of getting killed and falling and rolling down the hill. Then the guy who just got killed would stand at the bottom. And the thrower would go to the top. It was fun watching everybody leap into the air from explosions or jerk around as they were shot by multiple bullets and then roll down the hill. Everybody got the chance to be the shooter and the guy getting killed. And both were fun in their own way. We could eat up an entire recess playing Best Falls. For me, it was Lego golf that I would play in our carpeted basement. I'd make a small golf club out of Legos, using one of the flatter pieces as my club head, and hit one of the Lego tires around to different holes. I think I used the targets from the game Hyper Dash for holes. My cousin had an awesome collection of baby dolls. And her family had an old, circa 1970, RV permanently parked next to their house. We pretended that we were pregnant, pillows stuffed in shirts, etc. and would eventually give birth to the baby dolls. However, we were also at the age where we thought teenagers were the coolest of cool. So the backstory was always that we were runaway pregnant teenagers who had nowhere to live other than this broken down old RV. We thought the storyline was exciting and tragic. I didn't realize until adulthood that our go-to fantasy was trailer park. As an older sister of a brother, I didn't get the chance to be a girly girl. I became obsessed with G.I. Joe. So my brother and I used to play that and go on missions all the time. And my dad's in the military, so we had all kinds of army stuff to wear lol. I'm still kind of obsessed with the Baroness. There's that game everyone played in their head on car journeys. With a little character running alongside and dodging cars and other obstacles. For me it was Super Mario. Whenever I had sleepovers at my house we would play a game at night that was a mix of hide and go seek and reverse tag, where one person would go hide in the yard and the other kids would go out with flashlights and try to find them. And once you found him you had to tag him. If the kid hiding couldn't be found or he made it inside the garage, he won. It used to be that he had to physically be brought down and held to the ground, but we had to stop playing like that when one kid ended up with a broken nose. Polar bear tag. We had a fairly shallow inflatable backyard pool, bigger than a kiddie pool. Whoever was the polar bear had to navigate the pool by walking on their hands and knees while trying to catch the penguins. Peanut butter jelly race. Think of it as a variation of red light, green light. One person would call out peanut butter or jelly on peanut butter. The others would have to trudge around slowly as if they were stuck knee deep in a pool of peanut butter. On jelly, they would zip around and fumble as if on a slippery, jelly coated floor. The first one to reach the end won. Children are weird and creative, and it's honestly the best. I put some books on the floor, and I jumped on them while trying not to touch the floor. A variant of the floor is lava. Me and my sister would play color copy, where one of us would draw a picture and the other would follow along on their paper. They'd inevitably both be shitty, but surprisingly close. It's almost akin to those wine and painting things where 13 women down a few bottles of wine and all paint the same tree. My dad had this old station wagon from the late 1970s throughout most of my childhood that I thought was amazing. It was big and there was so much room to play in the back. Sometimes I would put on puppet shows for the cars behind us in traffic when we stopped at a red light. As dangerous as it was for a small child to be loose in the back of station wagon without a seatbelt, I used to play an even more dangerous game sometimes. I would lay across the top of the backseat and try to remain as stiff as possible. When my dad would brake accelerate, the momentum would cause my body to fall either on the cushioned seat in front of me or on the old couch cushions my dad had put in the back. I thought it was so much fun to roll and fall one way, then get back up and fall the other. And I would play this game a lot. It wasn't until years later that I realized how dangerous that was. I was a kid just openly playing a falling game in the back of a station wagon. If we had ever gotten into any sort of accident, I would have gone flying out the front or back windows and probably killed instantly. Still, I had so much playing that game. Here's a picture of my dad in that station wagon. There was a game my friend and I used to play at sleepovers. We had a different name for it every time, but the best name was probably turn all the lights off in the basement and throw stuff at each other. It was a simpler time. I played this game we called Hunger Games, and we had about 15 or more people standing in a large circle out in the field of school. Someone would shout 3, 2, 1 and everyone would run. Sometimes there would be balls in the middle, and if you hit someone with a ball, they die and cut in the middle. If you touch someone, they die, and if you touch each other at the same time, you both die. When there are around 3-5 people left, the dead come back and require a quick double touch to kill someone. Last one alive wins. To make this more child-friendly, change death to out. Wall ball. You throw a tennis ball against a wall, and if someone else catches it, you're out. If you touch it twice and don't catch it, you're out. If it hits you and you don't touch the wall before the next throw hits it, you're out. Edit. Seems like a lot of the older folks played this, but with more violent asses. Edit 2. When I played it, I wasn't sure if it was a small thing only at our school or if it was pretty popular. Looks like the second one. I'm having some good memories thinking about this game. My friends and I had a brick wall in the playground, and we used to pretend we were all spies in an airplane while sitting on this brick wall. We'd execute maneuvers which were actually just us all leaning side to side, and I'd sit at the front, the leftmost seat on the wall, and pretend to be the pilot. And there would be enemy spies and moles who would double cross us. And invariably we would have to either jump out the airplane or do a crash landing. It was awesome. A few days before Christmas, my siblings and I would always play a game where we would all take turns being presents. This involved crawling under the Christmas tree and curling into a ball, as if we were wrapped up toys. One of us would take the role of the child running in to open the presents. But when they get to the tree, we would all spring up and try to tag them. If they were tagged, then they would become a toy and the one who tagged them would become the child. Creepy as fuck now that I think about it, and also not very creative. I still wonder what the point was. My brother, roughly 12, and my neighbors, 3 boys under 13 at the time, and I, female, 9-10, would play a game where I was, in retrospect, working at a brothel. I would be under a desk with a bedsheet covering the entrance, and the boys would pay my brother to enter only for us to make loud moaning noises pretending to have sex, as the others outside would dance in a circle screaming gibberish and wearing only their underwear with my teddy bears shoved in their crotch. It was called DR Cake, a game where my young cousin would menacingly push a toy shopping cart and scream DR Cake while everyone else ran from him. He was actually very terrifying, and it was like running from a villain in a horror movie. My brother and I invented a game we called King. The king walks in a big circle as slow and regally as possible with our parents' old comforter draped over their shoulders. The other person stands in the center of this circle and waits for the signal. At some point in walking around, the king will say king. The second king is the signal. The king begins running and the person in the center must tackle them. Pick POC. Just throw a ball to the ground and the person in front of you grabbed it and did the same. I usually played with my grandma. My sister and I created the Slug Wars. Basically, 2 combatants got backwards into a sleeping bag so their feet were hanging out of the head hole. Then, you blindly battle to the death. Great times. Edit. It's nice to meet so many people who also served in the Slug Wars. Thank you for your service. I remember playing hospital in kindergarten. Basically, One kid would lay on a bed and everyone else would try to heal their injuries with makeshift cures. I remember throwing marbles over the stomach would cure stomachache before they died. The kids pretending to be a patient decided when that would happen, which often led to arguments because we didn't want the game to end that soon. Happy Cake Day. My friends would play a game we called Transformers where we picked a transformer and then just ran around doing nothing in particular. Me and my brothers would create forts in the basement. One would be defending the fort and the two others would be attacking. We would use Nerf guns and it was always with the lights turned off. It was probably the coolest thing ever at the time. Hall ball. Me and my brother made it up and used to play it for hours. Me and my siblings were raised by single working dad, so I was left to babysit pretty frequently. Our foyer is one where you walk in and you can see up to the second floor. So the stairs are L-shaped and if you were to jump from the top platform of the stairs over the rail, you could land right in the center of my foyer. We developed a firefighter game where we'd send down a rope curtain sheet and slide down it, resulting in endless rug burns and sprains. We then turned it into a swing, which was awesome. It's actually pretty funny because I was always doing random gymnastics moves and stuff and ended up growing up to be an aerial silk hammock yoga instructor. The water game. Me and my sister would try to be the first to spot water running down cliff sides on the interstate on long trips. Riveting stuff. My brothers and I played a game we called Kick Kick. Two of us would lay on either side of the couch with our feet facing each other, then we'd put our feet together and kick back and forth, gradually increasing in speed until it was just a frantic barrage of leg and nut shots. It never ended well. Nothing about it was clever. We were idiots. Don't let the balloon touch the floor. By far the dumbest game me and my brother ever came up with growing up was Oxygen. One of us would lay on the ground with a beanbag chair draped over our face and body, and the other person would jump off the bed onto the beanbag chair and smother the other person's face. The idea was to see how long you could go without breathing, and when you got to the point you could breathe no more you would yell out oxygen. Oxygen, hence the name of the game. Monster. First played, by my memory, when I was 4. Usually played when mom was out of the house. Just me, my dad, and my sister. Dad would turn off all of the lights. Then he would chase us around the house, growling and roaring. If we were caught, he would tickle us and drag us back to the living room. The other kid had to reach a designated button, usually a metal coaster, and shout, "Pause," so that our dad would freeze for 10 seconds, giving the captured kid a chance to run. So many good memories of this game. I really appreciate that my dad took the time to play with us whenever he could. Bocky or bike hockey. Even though only one person was on a bike, there were 3 of us, so the game was played 2v1. The 2 people are on rollerblades with hockey sticks and a ball, a hard plastic street hockey ball. The one person was on a bike. The object of the game was to shoot the ball between the wheels of the bike. If we got it through, we got a point. If he blocked it with his foot, he got a point. We had a 50-yard stretch of our street we'd play on. We actually used to set a timer and play for 3 5-minute periods. Booty pinches. My mom would chase my brother and I around the house, and if she caught us she would pinch us, lol. When my brother and I were kids, we used to play a game where we'd shoot root beer and see who could do it faster. I guess we must have seen people doing shots on TV or something. We'd have our bottles of root beer, shot glasses, and then we'd pound the shot. And the first one to slam the glass back down on the table was the winner. Whoever had the most wins by the time the bottles were empty was the champion. The penis game, played between 2 or more people in school. Take turns yelling the word penis, getting increasingly louder every time. Whoever yells penis the loudest wins. We played this mix of Lego Ninjago and Minecraft on the playground every day. Herobrine would attack our base and we would have to defend it from his forces with our elemental powers and our talking dog with a shaper-shifting watch. I wish I could remember what the game was called, but usually it had to do with having an area of about 3 or 5 neighbors' yards as base. And we had to sprint and make it to the middle one before a car would pass by, depending on which way they were coming. You had to practically face plant into the middle yard in time so the car wouldn't see you. That was the gist of it. Most of the time it was played when it was getting dark out. I miss those days. Right now my kids and I started a new game that I think they'll grow to remember. It's where I grab them in a weird way and they try to break loose. I always come up with weird ways to hold them and they struggle and pull until they are loose and yell at me to do it again, lol. They don't know it, but they are secretly being trained on how to escape a predator. If someone grabs my kids, I want them to be able to kick ass and make it as hard as possible. Playing this game I've received many scratches and bites, lol. It was called Barbie War. Basically we'd all throw Barbies at the fan and then the opposing sides would take cover behind the beds with laundry baskets over our heads for shields. My whole family would play a 5-minute game of tag starting at the same time every night. Whoever was it at the end was it at the start of the next night. On road trips my father would have my siblings and I play the quiet game. That ruse lasted years before I realized he was trying to have a few moments of peace. I was not a bright child. My dad grew up poor and he had a lot of games that he would teach us so he didn't have to buy us toys. Mother hen v fox. Everyone lines up behind the hen and holds the waist of the person in front of them. The it person is the fox. It person tries to tag anyone in the line. The hen tries to protect the baby chicks. The person tagged is now the fox and previous fox is now the mother hen. Repeat. Tossing marbles. Draw a circle. Put marbles in the circle. Toss marbles to try and hit other marbles out the circle. Playing this game helped with beer ping later on. 24. Take a deck of cards. Throw down cards until you can use the cards and math functions to make 24. The game was interesting with just addition and subtraction. A real challenge when I learned multiplication and became very easy with higher level math. I have a thing for tournaments. I don't know what it is, but I love brackets. I've read books with nothing but brackets of random shit. Best vegetable or best vacation spots and shit like that. On my summer breaks from school, I would stay up super late, like 6 AM, and I would spend my time playing this tournament game while listening to sports talk radio. Basically I would write down the names of my friends and people I knew and fill out a bracket. I'd flip a coin to see who won. The first round started as best of 5 and they got progressively longer. With a loser's bracket that was best of 3. When a player got enough flips in his/her favor, they would move to the next round. After a champion was crowned, I would calculate all the winning percentages by hand and use their overall records to seed them going into the next tournament. I still have notebooks full of these tournaments in my parents' shed. My friend and I went to Christian school and in 2nd grade we created a game at recess called Dogs of God, or DOG for short. We used to imagine the whole playground was the African savannah and we were anthropomorphic dogs that defended the wild animals from human poachers. We would pray to God to send us down guns from heaven and kill the poachers. After a while, we transformed our characters into Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong because Donkey Kong Country, SNES, had just come out and we were really into that game. Diddy. Watch out. Poacher behind you. Dear God. Send me an AK-47 in your name I pray, amen. Rat-tat-tat-tat-boo, I'm dead. I got EM. Donkey. We used to kick off our shoes on the swing and the winner was who kicked it further. My siblings and I called it bucking bronco. 2 of us would gang up on the third, tackle them to the ground, belly down, while pinned down. One would sit on the back of the down sibling, facing backwards, grab the down sibling's feet, thumbs available to tickle the bottom of the feet. We all are very ticklish. Now that you're sitting on the other with their feet in your hands, start tickling and see how long you can hold on. Much like a bucking bronco. My cousin and I used to play this board game called Hero's Quest. It was a fun game, but somewhere down the line we stopped playing the game with the official rules and kinda made up our own RP game. It was a blast. We would sit there for hours and hours just role playing using this board game. I still think back on how much fun we had doing that. We would put on our bathing suits and stuff the top and play Baywatch. One of my cousins would pretend they were drowning and we'd run with a pillow in slow motion or throw out a jump rope to pull them to safety. The kids in my neighborhood and I used to have barrel races at the abandoned furniture factory at the end of our street. They had dozens of 55-gallon drums and a big grassy yard. We'd lay them on their side and walk on them to make them roll. In order to make them go forward, you had to walk backwards. In order to steer, you had to lean and move one side of the barrel faster than the other. We used to race them like 50 yards. Good lord, we had fantastic balance back then. Pretending to be the raptors in Jurassic Park in the kitchen and slamming ourselves against the couch. How the fuck did we not kill ourselves? My sister and I came up with one we like to call walk around the whole house at night. Basically, we'd wake each other up in the dead of night and sneak around the house without waking people up. Then go straight back to bed. We had to walk around each room clockwise and around every table. We were weird kids. While I was in big church as a young kid, I obviously got really bored. Big church was essentially just the normal sermon, but of course had nothing entertaining for children. Used to beg my parents to leave or just fall asleep blatantly, which apparently shamed them. My sister is 8 years older than me and would attend big church with us. We would play this game where person A held their arm out, palm up. Person B would slightly graze their fingers up person A's arm from wrist to elbow. If person A thought that person B had reached the inside of their elbow, without looking, they would squeeze their hand in a ball. Person B would stop and show where their fingers were. If person A was right, they got a point. This game could take like 15 minutes per round, was completely silent, and made us both content for the entire 60-90 minute long service. To this day I still don't know if my then preteen sister was just amazing at handling kids or if my parents had hypnotized her to control me in church. Play this game enough and you become a master at both the tickler and the guesser. Me and my brother would play baby hair eating rhinoceros. You'd pretend you don't have teeth. Say, I'm a baby hair eating rhinoceros. Then pretend to eat the other's hair. Elevator, someone would go into the furnace room, shut the door, and they were in the elevator. The rest of us would rearrange the family room and bring in different props to demonstrate that we were on a different floor. We changed outfits, accents. We played this for a good year. Don't shame me for this, but me and my sister used to tie clothes around our heads like bandanas and run around while my dad blew the leaves off the lawn. We called ourselves Nazis because we thought it was a cute way of saying people with knots on the heads like Nazi. Boy, were we wrong on that definition. My cousin and I were convinced that his neighbor's house has diamonds in the garden. We found a bunch of shiny diamond-shaped things in their yard scattered in random places. We used to dig up the dirt hoping no one would notice to find more of these diamonds. I think we found 10 and we split them in half. We would come back again and again looking for them. We made a promise not to tell any other kids or our parents about them. One day my mom found one of my diamonds in the pocket of my trousers and asked me if she should throw it. I was shocked. Why would she throw away an expensive diamond? Turns out, they were glass teardrop pieces of an old chandelier they threw away. I was so disappointed because we even planned to buy a Lamborghini with the money. If you want to get nothing in return, you can like and join my Discord. There is a link in the description.